Good morning, everybody. Just about to start here. It started right on time. One minute out here and we'll get started. Thanks everybody for joining. A lot of familiar names in the attendees. All right, let's dive in. I want to let everybody know that this is being recorded. If you're not okay with it being recorded because you're in the meeting, probably better dive out now. I don't think anyone will know that you're in the meeting unless you speak up. There will be a time for questions at the end, and it really seems to work best if you submit your questions via the chat as the presentation goes on, and then we'll refer to those at the end so you can get them kind of put in ahead of time. My name is David Levine. I am the CEO and founder of Go West IT. We're a cybersecurity focused managed service provider. We help guide people to opportunity and protect them from harm on the digital frontier. And part of that is making sure that people know their role in cybersecurity. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to talk first just about what we're going to go through, and we're going to talk about the most common attack vectors. This is where threat actors are focusing their time. First is social engineering. Next is malware. So this is just programs that attack systems or software. Network breaches. Vulnerability exploitation. This is where a system has a vulnerability. Most of the time it's a known vulnerability that isn't patched, and it's a really easy way for threat actors to take advantage and get into systems. And then something that we're seeing is very common now is MFA, or multi-factor authentication interception. So as businesses have matured and are utilizing things like multi-factor authentication to help prevent access to their systems, email, computers, that sort of thing, threat actors are adjusting, and they're starting to figure out ways to intercept MFA prompts and requests and answers. So we'll talk about that. Security in layers has been kind of a mantra for IT security professionals for a very long time. However, I think we have in the past talked about devices, networks, cloud, data as some of those layers. I think it's really important that we talk about the human layer of cybersecurity, and that's what we'll focus on today. So having a good cybersecurity posture requires very good collaboration. So your organization, the business that you work for or that you run has a role in making sure you've got policies and training, and you're setting permissions, and you're grappling with how can we be a more secure organization. Second, you've got IT providers or internal IT departments in the mix who are responsible for things like antivirus, patching, monitoring, making sure backups are working okay, and keeping everything functioning. And then we also have you, the end users, the people who are responsible for producing work every day or producing whatever widget you're producing and selling. And it's really important that you as individuals follow established policies. You raise your hands when you see something that's a little suspicious. you pay attention and you stay vigilant and frosty as you're going about your workday. It's a very important part of your job. So I think it's also important that we talk a little bit about remote work. It's here to stay, it seems. And so the strategic approach from a cybersecurity perspective really needs to evolve to encompass our remote work environment. So those are some of the things we'll touch on here. To give everybody a feel for the threat landscape, I often refer to the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. Verizon gathers data from all kinds of breaches and incidents throughout the year, and they publish a really good report. This graph shows breach patterns over time and different attack vectors and strategies that criminals use. And I think one of the most interesting things about this chart is the fluctuation. I believe that the fluctuation here between what is at the top of the list or maybe decreases a little in popularity with the threat actors is that you can see it evolve. And I think what this shows is that if we have a year where threat actors are really using social engineering and then businesses become really good at preventing that particular type of social engineering attack, threat actors shift to focusing on web applications. And when we get really good at protecting web applications, maybe social engineering pops up a little bit again, or maybe threat actors shift and go to system intrusion as their method, and they start focusing on those vulnerabilities. So what I take from this chart is that the threat actors are constantly evolving their tactics for attacking businesses. It's true that pretext is where a threat actor is just, they come up with a story or they come up with a scenario that they're going to use to try to get into a system. And this pretext events include things like business email compromise, phishing attacks, vishing attacks that we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. That is increasing and still going up very dramatically as businesses get better at protecting networks and servers and laptops. The threat actors are shifting to the weakest link, which too often is people. So we're seeing social engineering attacks continue to rise very dramatically. This shows that 80% of breaches involved external actors. That's to be expected. There's a certain percentage that are always going to come from the inside, but most of the time it's external. 74% of breaches involved a human element. 49% of breaches involved credentials, and you're going to hear that we're going to focus on credentials a lot today. So you can see at the chart on the right, credentials were a very significant part of the types of tactics that threat actors were using.
Dave, can I interrupt here really quickly? I don't think the slides
yes.
are updating. I'm still on the cover page here.
Okay, I am advancing through, so I'm going to stop sharing and reshare. Thank you, Phil. I'm glad you said that. Now I'm going to reshare. If you'll all bear with me 1 second. Phil, can you confirm you're seeing a new slide now?
Yes, we are seeing the new slide.
Okay, and I'm going to advance to the next slide. Can you see this also?
We
Passwords? Can. Okay, great. Sorry about that, folks. I will make sure that we have this PowerPoint slide available for anyone who'd like to refer to it. Really, all we've done right now is go through some statistics, and thanks, Phil, for pointing that out. So I mentioned that we're going to focus a little bit on passwords today. I want to give you some little bits of information from various organizations and surveys. 62% of all interactive intrusions in the last year used valid accounts. That means that threat actors were able to gain credentials and use those credentials to attack businesses. 26% of intrusions involved attempt to dump credentials. So when a threat actor got in, one of the things they were after was gathering up credentials, probably so that they can use those in subsequent attacks. 11% of intrusions involved attempts to target unsecured credentials. 80% of confirmed breaches are related to stolen, weak, or reused passwords. 18% of individuals use their pet's name in their password. 12% of people always use unique passwords. That means that 88% of people don't use unique passwords. 96% of the most common passwords can be cracked by hacking tools in less than 1 second. And 89% of people realize they should use separate passwords everywhere, but only 12% of them actually do switch passwords between accounts. So I want you to understand why passwords today, even though we've been talking about passwords, it seems like for 20 years, why it's still such a big deal for businesses and particularly individuals to focus on. So This is a list of recent breaches. Phil, can you confirm you're still seeing this okay?
Yes.
So this is a list of recent breaches. Some very big ones at the top here: Caesars, MGM Grand, Fidelity National, very large title company that was breached last week, was down for almost an entire week. And we know that this happens all the time. So if you were to Google recent breaches, you could come up with your own list and it would be voluminous. When those businesses are breached, oftentimes the data that's gathered through those breaches makes its way to the dark web. At the same time, we have known lists of passwords that people use. In 2023, we still have people using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as their password. In fact, it is one of the top 10. And there are databases of millions of passwords that are available online, and particularly in the dark web. So these dictionary databases get put into the dark web, and threat actors have access to these databases, both the credentials that were leaked and the dictionaries. They will use those programmatically. It's not an individual sitting at a computer trying passwords one at a time. They will write software to programmatically try these passwords against lots of different types of sites. And they will just keep trying until they're successful. Once they're successful, they've verified that this set of credentials is good. And for all those people who use the same username and password everywhere, they now have access. They can double down on that set of credentials and get in the door and then go horizontally through an organization. So this is just one of the reasons it's so important to always use unique credentials everywhere you log in, so that if your credentials are stolen, at least they're not going to be used against other targets, and always use long, complex credentials. And the rule of thumb now is longer is better than complex. So getting to 16 or 24 characters is ideal. Password managers are usually necessary to do that reliably. I was fortunate to be able to visit and attend DEF CON this year. DEF CON is the largest hacking convention in the world. About 30,000 nerds packed into Caesars in Las Vegas, just learning the hacking craft. Many of the people who attend are cybersecurity professionals working to do offensive or protective cybersecurity services, and there are criminals who attend this event too, who are looking to hone their craft and use that against people in the real world. While at DEF CON, I participated in a password hacking exercise where password cracking experts taught me in about 15 to 20 minutes how to use some very sophisticated tools to get credentials out of Windows servers and use them against known databases and compare and get into password hacking. That might sound a little bit impressive, but at the very same time, this young girl was sitting next to me and she was going through the exact same exercise. The people showing us how to do this were definitely had advanced skills, and there were some very good conversations going on at a much higher level, but they were teaching people at a rudimentary level how to do this. You don't have to attend DEF CON to figure that out. You can Google how to crack passwords on the internet and come up with thousands and thousands of hours of video that train people how to do this. So password cracking is something that criminals are doing for sure. Let's talk a little bit about social engineering. Social engineering is when a threat actor is either sending you something via email, or maybe calling you, or perhaps they're talking to you in person, or perhaps they're using a browser to attack the human nature, which is to give information up that maybe you wouldn't normally give up. So they're hacking people. Happens in lots of different ways. The key to prevent a social engineering attack, so the key to keep yourself from falling victim, is to, number one, pay really close attention to urgent requests. It's true that people act and do things that they wouldn't normally do when there's an urgency put on it. And the threat actors know this, and so they leverage that to try to get people to do things they wouldn't normally do. So anytime someone's telling you you need to act urgently, your little spidey senses should go off and say, hey, why is this urgent? If you get requests that lack context or pertinent details, that's another clue. If you're getting requests at unusual dates and times, or sender requests from senders that you don't recognize, that's another clue. And then any unsolicited promise of a gain or benefit, that's a huge clue that something's wrong here. If it's too good to be true, it probably isn't true. So to prevent a social engineering attack, first slow down. Ask yourself why and what's at risk here. Seek some independent verification. You know, if someone's asking for something and it sounds a little out of place, that person doesn't normally ask you for the information they seek, maybe circle back to that individual through another communication channel, a cell phone, a business email address, and see if you can verify. Always follow procedures and protocols. We often see threat actors get into systems by convincing an employee to do something they're not supposed to do. You know, hey, I can't get to my cell phone right now. I don't have this contact information. I'm locked out of my account. Can you help me get in? And when people don't follow protocol by verifying who people are, or following procedure to verify 2 forms of ID, something like that, that's when we see problems. And then generally just increase awareness amongst your coworkers, and I would say to your customers and clients, talk with them about cybersecurity. Just keep everybody informed. AI, artificial intelligence, is making it much easier for criminals to attack people, because we no longer have the cues about maybe broken English if we're seeing an attack from the Eastern Bloc countries, where maybe the grammar isn't as good. AI makes it very easy for threat actors to craft very good communications now. Some of them even crafted to entice you to do something you wouldn't normally do. And then second, AI will allow threat actors to impersonate voices very easily. So it doesn't take much more than just grabbing video off of the internet, maybe social media sites, to replicate someone's voice. So making it much more difficult. At the social engineering community at DEF CON this year, we saw Vishing in action. Again, Vishing is when a threat actor is calling someone on the phone, and they have a good competition there. This young woman, who was in a soundproof booth off to the right, was participating in a competition where they were given a set of information or data that they were supposed to try to get from the business they were calling. And they were to see how many of the questions they could get the business to answer in a 22-minute time frame. This competition went on for the better part of 2 days, and then they crowned a winner at the end. They threw in some gotchas. You'll notice that she's dressed in overalls. One of the reasons for that is that they got extra points if they did a costume change in the middle of their attack. So it's just to kind of throw them off. They also let the audience vote on a kind of a weird question to ask the business that they were calling. And in this case, the question that won was, how would you survive if you were turned into a tiny insect for the day? The young woman in the booth actually did get a huge amount of information from the business that they were calling, and got the person that they talked to on the phone to tell them what kind of insect they would, or whether they would survive if they turned into an insect for a day. So it was really interesting to see how much data could be extracted by someone. And the young woman called and was posing as a college student going into their first job, who was really nervous about their first day at work, and started asking questions about what kind of technology do you use? How do you get trained? Do you use a VPN? Can I use my own device, or do you have to use a corporate device? And she was really good at getting information out of this business. I don't know if she won the competition, but she was one of the most impressive for sure. So I want you to understand the anatomy of a phishing attack. And when we say phishing here, I want you to think both email and voice now, because voice is very common. The anatomy of a phishing attack is that a threat actor will send an email or call a victim. When they get the victim's attention, they're going to try to entice that victim to click on a website or do something they wouldn't normally do. Oftentimes, then, they're going to phish credentials. That's the most common thing that happens in a phishing attack. They're going to get you to enter your username and password into a website that's controlled by the threat actor. Once the threat actor gets your username and password, they're going to try to use that username and password in a legitimate website. Now, if your business has set up multi-factor authentication, you should get a prompt, or the threat actor needs a code that's going to show up on your computer, or they need the code that was texted to you via text messaging. If you receive a prompt for that, if you receive a text message with a code in it, but you weren't trying to log in somewhere, or if you receive a prompt on your phone, a multi-factor prompt, but you weren't trying to log in somewhere, that's a good clue that a threat actor has your username and password. If that raises questions for you and you don't know why you're being sent that data, you need to block that attack. You need to say, no, I'm not going to give up this credential. And certainly, if someone calls you and says, hey, I need your multi-factor code, They wouldn't just tell you straight out, I need your multi-factor code. They'd pose as Microsoft, or they would tell you they're trying to help you in some way. Don't give them that code. That's the threat actor trying to get in, and you want to block them from getting into your account. If you are getting these prompts unsolicited, again, that means the threat actor probably has your credentials. It's time to go change your credentials at that site. And if you're working at a business, let your IT provider know, or let your internal IT department know so they can investigate that. So there's two types of phishing attacks. One is just a very broad phishing attack where maybe a threat actor is crafting a type of email that's sent to thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of people. And there's also spearfishing attacks, which is where a threat actor is targeting one or just a small number of people with a very pertinent content that is more likely to entice that individual to click on something or do something they wouldn't normally do. So just be aware, it's not always going to be a threat actor posing as a Saudi prince looking for a place to park their money. Sometimes it's going to be something that's much more relevant to your personal life. Maybe they're using some information they got off of social media. I want to talk through the Vishing attack that happened at MGM. MGM casinos were attacked earlier this year, just a few months back now. They were down. MGM was down for almost a week in various fashions. They couldn't check people in at the counter. The casino floors were down in many respects. People couldn't use their card keys to get in and out of hotel rooms. It was a really big deal. The threat actor in this case was known as Alpha, Black Cat, and then there was another group that was involved called Scattered Spider. Scattered Spider is actually the group that is really expert in doing vishing attacks, phone attacks. So Scattered Spider they looked up an IT resource that worked at MGM Grand in the IT department. They called MGM posing as that individual. So they figured out the name, kind of, the general age of the person that worked at MGM, and they called in posing as that person and convinced the internal help desk to grant some additional access. And it was under the context of, I need to get into the system because we're down. I'm having trouble getting logged in. We need to do this right away. The internal help desk granted additional rights to this individual, probably without following protocol. And that call lasted about 10 minutes. As a result of that call, the threat actors were able to take over Okta, which is a multi-factor authentication and single sign-on platform. That then gave the threat actor access to Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. And then the threat actors were eventually able to use ransomware to demand a very large payment. There's a lot of information about this attack online. You can go watch some videos that walk you through this. You can see the threat actor letters that were sent to MGM Grand. I think it's kind of interesting. The attack lasted 10 days. It was subsequently revealed that Caesars property was attacked by the exact same threat actor just prior to MGM, but Caesars paid a ransomware. They were originally asked for a ransom of $30 million. They negotiated that down to $15 million. They paid the $15 million and were able to avoid being shut down. However, they did have to disclose that attack, and it was very clear that it was the same threat actor. So MGM didn't play ball and was down for 10 days. Caesars did play ball, paid $15 million, and wasn't down. So what I want you to take away from this is that the threat actors are getting very sophisticated, and it's important that you really pay attention. I think it's very important also that you treat your home office like your office. It really is now. For those of you that are working from home, you need to be thinking about security at home. So first and foremost, business devices are for business purposes only. If your company issues you a computer, I would strongly encourage you, even if your company doesn't have a policy about this, to just use that for business. Don't do personal work on your business computer if you can avoid it. Only use approved devices and applications. Don't go installing your own software. And pay very close attention to web browsing. Even checking your personal email or accessing data shares or your social media on a business device can introduce risk. Definitely only let approved users use your work computers. Don't let kids do homework on it. Don't let a spouse use it for shopping, something like that. And secure your device when it's not in use. When you step away from your device, you should always lock it. Get in the habit of doing that. If you're on a Windows PC, you click the Windows key and then L. And on Macs, you use Command Control Q, or if you've got Touch ID, you can set that up. And then configure an automatic logout policy on your device if that's not enforced by your company, so that it automatically locks the screen after a certain period of time, and I'd recommend something between 5 and 15 minutes, 15 minutes on the outside. Be aware of line of sight if you're working in public spaces like coffee shops or at the airport. People can look over your shoulder and get information that they might then use to attack you. Um, and then always keep your devices up to date. This is particularly true for home networking devices. So hopefully, if you're using a business device, they've got a plan in place to keep that device updated. If they don't, make sure that when you see updates need to be applied, you do that. And then let's talk a little bit about your home networking devices. So at home, you're accessing the internet probably through a Wi-Fi router. It's important that that router isn't left in its default factory configuration, because the threat actors know the username and password to get into all of those routers because it's published in their support articles. So always, if you set up a router out of the box, change the admin username and password from the default. That's really important. Then next, make sure that your home routers are upgraded routinely, and that means updating the firmware on those routers. It's generally pretty easy to do. Generally, you'll be given a particular website that you go to that's the address of the router. Once you get to that website, you log in and you can just click on update firmware. The easiest way to figure out how to do this on your model of router is to flip the router over and look at the model, and then Google how to update firmware on the model number. You should get lots of input about that, or just go to the manufacturer's website and see if they've got some instructions for how to do that. On your wireless network, you should use WPA3 if at all possible. If that's not possible in your home environment, WPA2 is okay. Much better to use WPA3 for encryption on your wireless network. If you don't know what any of this means and you are completely lost here, ask for some help. Chances are that someone in your neighborhood or your circle of friends will be able to help you out with this. And if you're really stuck, give Go West IT a call. We'd be happy to talk with you. Segregate networks for business and personal use. If possible, it's really helpful to have a Wi-Fi network at home that you just use for business, that isn't connected to your thermostat, your Ring doorbell, your kids' computers, your TV. It's great to have that segmented so that if one of those devices is vulnerable and a threat actor gets into those devices in your home, that then doesn't leak to your business devices. So try to set up a separate network. If you don't know how to do that, you can get some help. One easy way to do that is to buy a separate router, set that up, and only connect your work computer to it. Don't use the username and password or the Wi-Fi for anything other than that device. Next, credential management. We've talked a lot about how credentials are really a common attack vector. I think it's really important that you pay attention to not sharing login credentials with any unapproved users. And I would strongly recommend a password manager. At Go West IT, we've got a password manager service. Lots of our customers use that. If your business doesn't work with Go West, or if your business doesn't purchase that from Go West, I strongly recommend investing in a personal password manager for both your personal world, and then you could leverage that for work too, if it's okay with your employer. Having a secure place to store passwords, let it help you create long, strong, unique passwords. Let it remind you to change passwords. And with some services like the one Go West offers, we'll even tell you if that password has shown up on the dark web, so then you can know you need to go in and change that. Again, think before you click. Stay frosty when opening attachments. Verify authenticity before you click on things. Think about what's at stake. Be aware of home assistant devices. So figure out how to tell Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri to stop listening. Think about this when you're on work calls, when you might be talking about some sensitive information. You don't want that data to somehow make its way into the current AI models that might be using data that's collected through those assistants. It's not supposed to be, but I will tell you that at DEF CON, the most popular village was the AI village, where people were working on prompts to get information out of AI platforms they weren't supposed to be able to get, and they were successful in doing that. So pay attention to what you're saying around your voice assistants. And then never use public Wi-Fi networks for business purposes. I would tell you don't even use it for personal purposes. Try to stay off of public Wi-Fi. Use your cellular connections or use a trusted device. If you have to have wireless while you're out and around, make sure you know how to set up your mobile device as your hotspot and use that instead. So you always want to develop a security first mindset, because paranoia is not retroactive. So listen to that little voice in the back of your head telling you something just doesn't seem right or feel right, and pay attention to that. Security first. For those of you who are attending this training today as part of a required cybersecurity awareness training, the secret word is Doppelganger. So if you can provide that to the person in your organization who is gathering evidence that you attended this training, you can let them know that Doppelganger is the secret word. And I want you to think about Doppelganger in the context of AI. You may have a real doppelganger out there somewhere, but it's very easy for threat actors to make themselves appear your doppelganger, and appear as you to someone else. So be aware of that as we go into this new world of AI. And with that, I'm going to open up for questions. Phil, will you let me know if we've had any questions submitted so far? And we'll give everybody a second to chime in.
Absolutely.
Great.
We have a question that says, do USB data blockers work for charging phones, et cetera, in public places?
That's a great question. I hate to answer definitively that USB blockers work because I can't say for certain that they always will. My advice would be, don't use publicly accessible chargers. Try to carry your own cord that you bought from the manufacturer if possible, and only plug it in, and then use your own power brick and plug that into an electrical receptacle as opposed to plugging into a USB port. So the question here is around the fact that it's easy for threat actors to put software into cables, into USB charging cables, or put software into ports where you can charge phones, and they can use that then to access devices. So if you're purchasing a commercial blocker, it may have some benefit. I don't know that I would trust it 100%. I carry a cable in my bag for my own charging, a cable that I bought directly from Apple, the Apple Store, and I try not to use anybody else's cable, and I don't plug into anything that I don't know for certain is secure. That's a good question.
We have one more. Will this webinar be made available?
Yes, we are recording this, and we are going to put this online. You'll be able to see it, and be happy to make sure that your employer gets a copy of it, and employer gets a copy of the slides as well. Be happy to do that. So just send us, you can send it to me directly. Be happy to send it out to you.
Next question, do you have a recommended password manager?
At Go West IT, we use Keeper Security. I have a lot of faith in that. It's an enterprise level password manager. There are a lot of other good password managers though. LastPass, Dashlane, Sticky Pass. One thing I'll tell you is that from time to time, you'll see information or publicity on password managers getting hacked. I don't believe at this point in time that any password manager has ever lost the encryption around password vault. It's true that some have experienced breaches from time to time. Even though that's true, I still think it's a better way for you to manage manage passwords is to use a password manager. So there's a bunch of good ones out there. Again, the ones I listed off, Dashlane, Sticky Pass, LastPass, and Keeper are all reputable. There's probably a few other good reputable password managers. If you're using an Apple device, the Apple Key Vault is good as well. But don't fall victim to the argument that, well, your password manager could be hacked, so you shouldn't use one. If you're not putting it in a vault, in an encrypted password manager vault, I would ask, where are you storing it? And I would tell you that 9 out of 10 answers that I get, the threat actors know about. So that's password encrypted Word documents, password encrypted spreadsheets, sticky notes on your computer, keeping it under your keyboard. The threat actors know about all those places. So use a password manager. The good thing about password managers is they've got a lot of very sophisticated security on their platforms. They're generally going to know if something happened, and they'll tell you. And that's what a reputable company should do at this point in time. So if they suffer a breach, they should let you know, and you should take action after that. So that's a great question.
We have another. What are the vulnerabilities for saving passwords to browser-based password storage, for example, Chrome?
Great question. Strongly recommend you don't do that, because if a threat actor gets access to your computer, if they're logged in as you, they're going to have access to all those passwords in Chrome or Edge or Safari, whatever browser you're using. So much better to go in and turn off the option to save your passwords in the browser. You can do that in the browser settings, and then use the password manager. It's a separate place of encrypted data where you want to use a really strong password to get into your password manager, and you want to use MFA, but then you only have to remember that one password manager, and we recommend turning off the option in your browser that saves your passwords for you. It's a great question.
No other questions so far.
Okay, we'll give it one more second here. If you don't have questions and you want to drop out, that's fine. I'm going to hang on the line here for a few minutes and see if any other questions pop up. Always, if you feel like you've got a question that you didn't want to post in this webinar and you'd like to talk with us about it, please get in contact with Go West IT. I'm not going to try and push a bunch of cybersecurity services on you. I'll be happy to visit with you about it. I love talking about cybersecurity and want to help anybody that we can. So thanks very much for everyone's attendance today. I'll hang out for a few minutes, and hope you all have a great finish to the week. Thanks. Phil, I'll let you prompt me if we see any other questions pop in. I'll turn on the queue too.
Will do. I have an attendee asking where the webinar will be posted.
We will post that to the Go West IT YouTube channel. You can get to that through our website. We have a number of videos posted out there, and our podcast gets posted there as well.
Do you have any resources for testing cybersecurity knowledge?
I do have a few, and because I see who posted that message, I would say let's take that offline. Most of the knowledge testing would come in the form of either courses or maybe some training videos. And Go West IT actually has some plans around this in the coming years to make things available on a more ad hoc basis, so that people who can't attend something like this or can't attend a training put on by a company can access training ad hoc and or go through some testing to make sure they had good comprehension of the material. I think that's important when you're onboarding new people, that they get involved, they get brought into the fold on your company's cybersecurity posture and the training as you bring them in. So I think it's valuable to be able to offer the training content to new employees, and that should be part of every onboarding. At Go West IT, even though we're hiring generally very technical people and people that are familiar with cybersecurity, I meet with every single new employee. We talk about our company's culture and we talk about cybersecurity, and that goes right down to letting every one of them know I'm not going to ask you to buy gift cards. I'm not going to text you and tell you to change somebody's credentials. We're going to follow the proper channels. And anytime you have a question or concern about, what's going on at Go West IT, you should come directly to my door. You should contact me through approved methods. You should talk to our president and verify what's going on. Anything that looks out of the ordinary, we want you to raise your hand. We expect that. You're never going to be penalized for asking questions or taking your time on something like that. So I'll follow up with that individual and just make sure we get a thorough answer and make sure I cover what you're after.
Looks like that may be it for now.
Okay, everybody. I'm headed to an AI panel across town, so I'm going to jump in the car. And I really appreciate everybody participating today and hope you have a great week. Take care.